Hello there, I'm Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. I have a few questions to ask. How much would you be willing to pay for a Snickers bar? Got a number in your head? All right, great. You can even write it down if you want to. Next question, how much would you be willing to spend on a bag of Cheetos? Those things crunchy and delicious. I've honestly spent quite a bit already, but keep that in mind. Now, what about a new car? Did you write that number down as well? All right, it can be a reasonable price. You can do whatever you want, but we're going to answer these in a little bit. Also, let's move on from there. What about how much are you willing to pay for your living space? Apartment, house, what is it? The reason that I ask you these things is because, well, we have these ideas in our mind oftentimes of, well, we can afford it. And really, if you have some, we'll say teenagers or maybe even some college students that are in your household, maybe this is a video that they should watch because there's some pretty incredible things to see here. I think it's a value to everybody, but certainly there are things that I wish was shared with me in a more meaningful and impactful way when I was younger. So about that Snickers bar, sugary, delicious. Oh my goodness, take a look at this thing. Isn't that gorgeous? Don't you just want to take a bite of it? This is not a Snickers advertisement, I am not sponsored. However, we'll say that you're at a grocery store and we'll even say that they have a deal on it, that they're going to sell you this candy bar for the low price of $1. I think that's a reasonable amount. And if you like candy bars, say woo candy down in the comments. $1 for the candy bar. And what we're going to do, instead of buying the candy bar, we're going to save our teeth. We're going to save our health from eating all that sugary goodness, even though it would be so satisfying in the moment. And instead, we're just going to slap it into the stock market, the S&P, for 30 years. So take a look at this investment calculator. In this starting amount, we're going to put in that $1 that you're going to spend for that Snickers bar. 9% for 30 years is what we're looking at. So investing that dollar instead of spending that dollar on that delicious sugary, crunchy candy bar, $1. We'll put that in there and we'll press enter. That candy bar actually costs you $13.27 30 years down the road. Forgoing that candy bar, just that $1, or even finding a dollar anywhere that you can spare to put towards investment rather than spending it in the moment for immediate satisfaction. $13.27. Would you buy that Snickers bar if you knew it was going to cost you $13, or would you say heck no and just pass it on by? All right, well, I have some other things to ask you. I mentioned that bag of Cheetos, and I would like to look at this bag of Cheetos. I don't know if you've ever tried this kind of the cheddar jalapeno. They're absolutely delicious and addicting. However, this bag that you see here is not the size that I buy. I actually buy the bigger one that I think is closer to a half pound instead of 3 1/4, and I really shouldn't eat it. It's not great for me. And honestly, when we put it into the investment calculator, you'll see that's not even really a price that I'm even willing to pay. So let's jump back over here. The bag that I normally buy is $4.50. So I don't know if you like Cheetos or not, but let's put in $4.50, and I'll give you a moment to take a guess at what that's going to turn into. Nearly $60 is what I could have had instead at the end of that 30 years time. And I know 30 years might sound like a long time away. Now, mind you, don't think about this as oh, what am I going to do? Just hold off on everything for 30 years? No, it's about looking for opportunities to find money to put towards investment rather than spending on immediate pleasures in the moment. Now, there's a whole lot more that we can get into that, but still, looking at this and knowing that it's cost $60 for that bag and lost investment opportunities. So yes, it was delicious, and yes, I had to run some extra miles and work out a little extra harder, drink a lot more water to get rid of all that sodium that was in there. However, looking at that value makes me never want to buy a bag of Cheetos again. Just forgo it and just instead put that money towards investment instead of spending on that immediate pleasure that honestly I didn't really need in the first place. All right, so I also asked from there, actually, you know what I missed? I missed the cell phone. For cell phone, who doesn't want a new iPhone, right? Check out, as of the recording of this video, with the iPhone 14 Pro here. $1,300 for this beautiful device that you have. And Apple does a nice job, just with these clean, elegant web pages that they have. And they save from about $1,000. But honestly, I think that's a 128 gigabyte version of it. And with photos and videos and apps, they're all huge. I would honestly bump up to 1 terabyte, and I believe that that's $1,299. How much would you be willing to pay for the iPhone? So if we take that back down and go to the investment calculator, changing up our $4.50. So let's say not skipping a phone altogether. Instead, just think about skipping a generation. So my phone that I have right here is currently about 4 years old. I'm sure it'll get to the end of its life cycle sooner or later, but let's put in that $12.99 just to see how much it actually costs us by having an extra phone in the cycle rather than holding off. Could you imagine spending $17,000 on that Apple phone? Because honestly, by skipping a generation, by holding off on some of the conveniences and some of the shine that honestly nobody ever notices anyway, and this phone is an iPhone XS. It still works perfectly well for me. I got it in, I think, April or May of 2019 when my old phone broke. And honestly, even though this one has a shattered back glass, I'm still going to use it until the thing dies, because I'd rather take that money that instead of using on discretionary spending, I could put it towards investment instead. And it's not going to have no real impact on my life. So why not? $17,000. I could get such an incredible computing device with beautiful displays, so much more powerful than what I'm recording on right now, and it would be absolutely incredible. That's super expensive. Now, this next one is kind of fun because these iPhones that we talk about, now look at that price at $12.99. Keep that in mind that it's over $1,000. I will tell you that for my first two vehicles that I ever had in my life, my first two vehicles, I spent less than $1,000 on my first two vehicles. And I wouldn't call that incredibly frugal. I was just broke, and it was what I could afford at the time. Being 16 years old, new driver's license, and I wanted that freedom and that independence. And that really meant driving one heck of a clunker. And I think I paid my sister $200 for her old beat up thing that she had. And that was her $200 car payment that she got on the new Ford that she bought or whatever it was. And then my next car after that was $700. I really stepped up my game. That's $900 that I spent between two vehicles. And now this phone actually that I bought, not even the $1,300 for the new one, I think I paid $1,200 for the one that I have 4 years ago. So that's incredible to think about such a small device I can hold in my hand being more expensive and dropping that money on it over the first two vehicles that I ever owned. Here we go. So this is what you're driving right now. Maybe you're a teenager and you're watching this and you like your car because it gets you to where you need to go, but you're dreaming about those next new and nicer cars. And so you get your first job at 18 and you start looking and you see this one and you see this brand new shiny vehicle. This is actually kind of pretty. I didn't know this one existed. I like the paint and it's very appealing, and it's much better than the 2011 Nissan that I'm driving around right now. I have an old Nissan sedan with the paint fading and some handprints that are etched into it from my daughters when they were little, the toddlers, and sunscreen going on it. Nearly $30,000, and I'll work with $30,000 because honestly, after tax, tags, title, you name it, it never ends up being this price anyway. It out the door, it just doesn't work out that well. So we're going to call it $30,000 that you pay for that, rather than sticking around with that clunker that you could have had for a little bit longer. Let's go back to the investment calculator here and see how much over 30 years it could cost just by holding off for a few years. I'm not talking holding on forever to that clunker, but we'll say forgoing a car out of one of the cycles that you hold off paying that $30,000 for 5 years time. Instead, you just pay yourself that $30,000 in that 5 years time, and then you just sit on that for the next 30 years after that. So let's put in $30,000. And when you do that, if the S&P were to return that 9% over the next 30 years, and now mind you, there's no guarantee that it will. There's always a risk, and none of this is financial advice. Even if you cut this rate in half down to 4.5, which the S&P does not typically return. This is over the history of the S&P returning that 9% with dividends reinvested. Almost $400,000. I don't know if you know what that means or not. Like, that's a decent house around the area that I live in, even if it's not a house. Let's go back to Chrome here. Look at this. A Lamborghini Huracan Evo. $200,000. By holding on to that $30,000, by skipping a car cycle, we'll call it that, by skipping buying a $30,000 car and paying for it, just holding off and investing that cash instead, you could have had not one, but two of these Lamborghini Huracans. which again, tax tags title, you wouldn't quite get there, but you would be so darn close. As a matter of fact, you might have that $30,000 in car payment left over after buying 2 of them just by holding off for a little bit. Now, that kind of be a silly reason to hold on to that. Now, the last thing that I have to look at this, we'll use this image for standing for a sort of apartment life. So again, maybe you're one of those teenagers or in your early 20s and you want to buy a new house. You want to be living on your own. Maybe instead you go for an apartment versus a house. Maybe you get an apartment with some roommates. Maybe you get a house with some roommates. The angle that I would like to take a look at this, rather than jumping right to something maybe that would be all shiny and brand new. Now, real estate's tricky because real estate is an appreciating asset, typically speaking. So that real estate's just more of a tricky area to get into, but we will stick around right now on the investment angle on this, and just keeping it simple and talking about the apartment life, maybe with some roommates, and maybe you're able to save about $500 a month for that. And maybe you do that during that same 5 years that you're holding off on that car. So $500 a month. Well, even that's $6,000 for a year. For 5 years, that's another $30,000. That means at the end of that time, now mind you could buy a house whenever you wanted to. You could buy that house later on when you want to. But remember, houses, I already mentioned, appreciating assets. They're a little bit differently than when we talk about cars that lose value the moment you buy them. That's different. But holding off on those costs earlier is something that you can use as investment tools later on. So let's go back to the investment calculator just real quick. There we go. And let's just say that just for a year you held off buying that house, and let's say that instead you saved that $500 a month in payment. Or maybe you bought the house, you bought the appreciating asset, but you got a roommate that helped you save some of the cost on that, and we'll bump that down to $6,000. So by cutting this down to $6,000 just for that 30 years, so this is $500 a month for an entire year, it comes out to $6,000. And after that, go do it, get rid of your roommate because you didn't want the roommate. And then that $6,000 that you invested instead of spending on the property that you were in now turns into almost $80,000. So every dollar that you can save is effort. Make no mistake about it that it is hard to put off the shiny objects early. But when you can find those opportunities to save whatever you can, invest whatever you can, that effort early on, that struggle early on is something that can pay back in dividends. And it's something that I would implore that you consider finding every opportunity that you can to take advantage of. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you like this video, go ahead and click that like button, hit the subscribe button to see more of my content, and ring that notification bell to be notified anytime that my videos come out. If you'd like to support this channel further, please find the links down in the description. Check them out, see if there's anything that appeals to you that's there, and I would absolutely appreciate it. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. We'll see you in the next video.